Okay, so I'm Dr. RJB, and I wanted to talk about a controversial topic. Is yoga really exercise? So people watch people doing yoga and they kind of wonder, is this really exercise? When people do these funny postures. Uh, the thing is that um, uh, doing yoga and holding those postures in a certain position is not that much different than when people who are working out their core do planks or do other positions to strengthen their core. Um, so yoga does strengthen the core by the postures that are done. Um, as well, yoga has different forms of it. One of the forms of yoga is called flow yoga. This is where people go from one position to the next position without stopping in between. And so they might be doing 15 minutes of flow yoga where they're constantly moving. At this point, it's almost an aerobic exercise because of the constant movement of the person between one position and the next. So that works the heart muscle, it works the arm and leg muscles, works your balance, etc. Um, uh, Now, I have to admit that I don't really like flow yoga. The way I've been taught is more of the static yoga, where you get into a posture and hold the posture. See, years ago, there was no such thing as postures. People would sit in a position and meditate. That was the original yoga. So there were a number of seated positions that were taught with the idea of being able to stabilize the body in certain positions. And this was because when you meditate, you sometimes have a tendency to fall asleep. So they would basically position their body so that they wouldn't fall asleep when they were doing their yoga. Um, uh, the Eventually, somewhere in about the 15th or 16th century, people started coming up with these different postures. But you see, yoga has been around for about 10,000 years. And before that, there really wasn't a lot of postures. If you read the story of the Buddha, one of the initial parts of his story is about the point when he was a yogi. Um, and he was doing things like going on fasting for various periods of time, getting really, really skinny, doing all kinds of observances and cleansing procedures, just punishing his body. Because at that point, people thought that the body was getting in the way of developing enlightenment. And so they wanted to punish the body with all kinds of drastic procedures. Taking enemas every day, vomiting every day, got to do whatever it could to kind of like punish the body. And then, of course, the Buddha found what he called the middle way. He didn't want to do excess. He didn't want to do minimal. He wanted to do the middle way. Um, and that's how he was able to develop his enlightenment. But part of the story, like I said, is that the original yoga was a series of fasting and ways of kind of punishing the body, like I said. After Buddha came around, um, uh, people started getting into milder forms. And I read a book that was out close to, I would say 1,000, 1,500 years ago. And this book was talking about one of the original yoga. And it basically taught seated postures, crossing your legs, bending the legs backwards, different seated postures. And the intention was to get yourself into a position so you could meditate. Um, Uh, so, that was where all the yoga was up into the head. Now we have something called hatha yoga, where it's all about physical postures. And, even with the static postures, don't forget that we have something called isometrics, where people will use the body against the body to strengthen the muscles. Um, some of the older people used to use isometrics to build up their muscles. And it worked very, very well. If you didn't have weights and somebody was kicking sand in your face at the beach, you did develop your isometrics and you became, a great muscle man. So it is possible to do that. Most people these days, though, do isotonic type exercises like weightlifting, or like what I do is running. But I also do yoga because when I do running, I get stiff. And so I want to loosen up by doing the yoga to kind of loosen up and mobilize my joints. Some of the weightlifters will also do mobility type exercises to kind of loosen up because they know that the weight training can also stiffen them up. Um, and of course, they do some cardio type exercise like I do, the running, so that they can help with their heart. Uh, I do mostly running, but I also do some weight training to strengthen my muscles because there's no way that I can run if my muscles are not strong. Um, and like I said, I use the yoga to keep flexibility. Um, So that's kind of where yoga is. It's important for your flexibility and mobility. And you can get a little bit of muscle exercise by doing it, depending on how intense your yoga workout is. It could be more. If it's less intense, like the version that I do, it's going to be maybe a little bit less muscle building. But still it's good for the muscles because of increasing the flexibility. Um, okay, so there's my take on yoga. I've been doing it for 40 years, so I guess I'm a little bit of an expert on it.